Mercury retrograde, November 25th, 2024 at 6:42 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at 22 degrees SAG. And it'll be going direct on December 15th at 6 degrees SAG. Of course, all of this just before the holidays. And one of the key ideas behind Mercury retrogrades is travel snafus. So just be prepared for that. Now, Mercury retrograde happens about 3 times a year for about 3 weeks, not counting the shadow. And if you want to learn more about those details, go to my expanded version. Just go to the icon to my channel and hit video or playlists and you'll find it. Anyway, Mercury retrograde is also a great time to rethink things, to go inside and do your research for what you want to buy or travel plans you want to make. Because Mercury rules the mind. So that's why our thinking can be a little confused and misunderstandings of what we're saying as well as what we're hearing. Mercury also rules transportation. So again, why we may hit some traffic jams or unexpected things like that en route. And it just rules technology. So anything, especially electrical, computers, appliances, any of the kind of thing like that might run into a few little issues here. Now, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is also going to bring an international flair. So we could see misunderstandings between countries. International travel might get bothered too, and good heavens, maybe a satellite will just fall out of the sky and screw things up. But what's really cranking this energy up to the next notch is that Mercury is opposing Jupiter. Now, Jupiter's going to give us, in Gemini, Jupiter's going to give us some optimistic thinking, some feelings of goodwill, and good ability to do some planning. But remember, everything Jupiter touches, it expands, whether it's something good or something bad. So if you feel an argument starting to get escalating, step back, stop. If you're feeling a little like, I know everything, Saggy, being arrogant or somebody else's, stop. Making big promises that maybe you won't be able to keep. And the thing I love about Jupiter, one of the things, they can't keep a secret. So some cats may be getting out of the bag these days. So anyway, I hope that helps. And oh, and don't forget your details. So bye everybody and good luck. Hope to see you in the expanded version. Bye. Well, welcome back everybody to Mercury retrograde, November 25th, expanded version. Okay, so the first thing I always want people to think about when they're thinking about Mercury retrograde is, first off, just how sensitive are you to this? For example, for me, yeah, I notice it. It's coming up and that sort of thing. But I had this friend who's a Virgo sun sign, and Mercury rules Virgo. And she was also a Virgo rising. And oh my gosh, about a week before Mercury would go retrograde in any sign, she would, computers would start going on the fritz. A light bulb would blow out. Her car electricity would go snafooey, that kind of thing. So do start just tracking this. And I do this just on a calendar instead of trying to get this long journal going. That's for other things. I'll just note on there, oh, okay, this happened or nothing happened. Maybe you'll be a lucky one. And now generally Geminis and Virgos that are both ruled by Mercury are going to have a little bit more sensitivity to this. But not only check your sun sign, check your rising sign and your moon sign. All right. Are they Virgo? Are they Gemini? And once you get better and better at this, you'll start looking at your own Mercury, Venus, Mars, every planet, and see how that particular retrograde is affecting you. Now, and obviously, because this Mercury retrograde is all happening in the sign of Sag, it's going to be, Sagittariuses are going to be affected by this quite a bit too. Now, the thing that's knocking this one up a notch, as I mentioned, is that Jupiter is opposing this Mercury, all right, from Sagittarius to Gemini. All right, so Mercury's in Sag, Jupiter's in Gemini, so they're right across from each other. Now, Sag is always already prone to exaggerate a little bit. I'm a Sag, so I can say I can totally understand. Um, but with this opposition in a Mercury retrograde, anything you hear these days, check it, check it, check it. I mean, if you hear something and it's like, really, really, and it sounds kind of unbelievable, it might be unbelievable. So just be aware of that. So I think the next thing I want to do to just is to bring the camera down and we'll look at a chart together, because I think you can, when you can see these things, it'll make a lot more sense to you, and we'll learn on other levels. Okay, hang on there. Okay, so here we go, our chart. We're going to look at these things, the retrograde, with our wheel. And the first thing I want to just mention is I want to review what a retrograde is. Now, all of this is in my Astrology for Beginners classes and that kind of thing. I think it's class 37 if memory serves. But anyway, but just to give you a quick review, now in retrograde, when we talk about it, we say that like Mercury stops and turns and goes backwards. Well, it doesn't really and truly do that. Now, if we were to looking at this from a heliocentric with the sun in the center, you know, our astrology is geocentric with the earth in the center. So just keep that in mind. That now we're going to be looking at this from with the sun, that everything's rotating around the sun. And what happens when you have two planets going along and they're parallel like this? One's going to be a little faster. In this case, Mercury, it only takes it like 88 days to get all the way around the wheel. So, remember I said Mercury goes retrograde every 3 times a year? Well, that's about how many times it laps our Earth. But anyway, so what happens is when these planets go around and one gets up here and turns around and goes the opposite direction, when it gets to that point where it's going the opposite direction, let's say this is the Earth, then it looks like it's going backwards until the planets again get parallel to each other and around and around. And then this happens about 3 times a year for us, that it takes for the Mercury to lap itself, basically. I don't know if I explained that very well, but hopefully when you see it, it makes more sense. So the planet doesn't really stop and go backwards. It just gets around that curve and looks like it's going backwards. Okay, so let's go back to our geocentric place here. Now, in this particular retrograde, we've got, and I wrote this card out, and feel free to take a screenshot of this. November 15th or 25th here is when Mercury is actually going retrograde at 22 degrees Sag. So when we're looking at this Mercury, it's up here in Sagittarius, and it's going to be going back and forth. Oops, can't see that, can you? I'll put it down here. Okay, so Mercury's in Sagittarius, and it's basically going all the way up to 22 degrees, all right? And that's when it goes retrograde or appears to start going backwards in the sky. And then on December 15th, when it gets down to 6 degrees Sag, it's going to look like it turns around and goes direct again. And that Jupiter, these are that opposition to Jupiter, but I'll explain that a little bit more. But there's the retrograde and the direct at 22 degrees and 6 degrees. Okay, so we basically have Mercury up here going zoom, 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 all in Sagittarius. Now the shadow, I've noted here, started November 7th. And for those of you who are super sensitive, you may have already started to feel that retrograde. Personally, for myself, I really only start feeling it maybe the week before it actually stops. And then I'll feel it that week, and then it kind of dissipates a little bit more, and then I'll feel it again, not quite as strongly, but again on that direct motion. And what the shadow means is when Mercury, we know that Mercury is going to go up to 22 and then back to 6 and then off it goes. Well, as soon as this Mercury hits that 6-degree point the first time around, that's when it's considered to be in its shadow. And then it'll go up to that 22, and then it'll stop and go back to the 6-degree, right, is where it turns direct. And then it's going to go direct until it goes to the 22nd degree. Should we wait for the clock? It won't. No, it's just that's not going to be too bad. Okay. So from that direct motion till it gets to 22 again, that's when it's also considered in its shadow. So that's what this is referring to here. When it got to 6 degrees and then went all the way up to 22 and then went back to 6, and then it won't be out of that shadow. It won't get back to that 22nd degree until about January 3rd. So just to let you know what that shadow means when people talk about that. Okay, so the other thing I want to go into a little more detail about is that I mentioned that Jupiter down here in Gemini is directly opposite, okay, and you can see it's down here directly opposite of Mercury. Now, that's what these dates are noting here, that the day that Mercury exactly opposed Jupiter. Okay, so Mercury's always in Sagittarius. Jupiter is always in Gemini for this opposition this particular month. And then again on December 4th on the retrograde, so when Mercury's going backwards, it's going to hit that Jupiter again, oppose that Jupiter again. Then it's going to, December 15th, it's going to turn around and go direct. And then on December 26th, it'll have that last opposition to Jupiter. So I would encourage you to take a screenshot of this and just note it down. Let me see, can I get, there we go. And just ponder this. Look, put little dates on your calendar so that you can start tracking your own personal reaction to these transits. Okay, now the other thing that that makes this retrograde a little bit more intense is that Mercury and Jupiter are in what's called mutual reception, okay? Now, you're probably going, what does that mean? Well, take my classes, or I'm sure many of you have read up on these things. But so just to review for you guys, so when Mercury is in Sagittarius, right, who rules Sagittarius? Jupiter. And Jupiter's in Gemini, and who rules Gemini? Mercury. So here we're seeing, it's called mutual reception. There's a stronger power there. There's more sympathy or empathy between these two. So there's a lot of they feel good to each other, basically. So again, that's why I'm like caution you about the exaggeration, or yourself, promising, saying, yeah, I can do that, no problem. And then when Mercury goes direct, you're like, what the heck did I just get myself involved in? So, but that's even strengthening this Mercury retrograde even more. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to just mention to you is about, just remember that even though Mercury is disruptive, it can also be enlightening. So keep your, remember how I mentioned about going inside and doing your interior work with a retrograde? This is a great time to get those kind of spiritual influences, because Jupiter is really connected into the higher realm, our belief structures. We may be getting some more information there that we need to digest. So that's kind of what the Mercury retrograde is, giving us time to digest information. Now, I wanted to also point out, along with this opposition here, sometimes oppositions can mean kind of difficulties too. But just remember that we also, just like from the Pluto one that I did before, you need to keep in mind which signs are, in this case, mutable, because Sag is mutable and Gemini is mutable. The other two mutable signs are Pisces and Virgo. So if you've got planets in any of those four signs, they're going to be feeling that that difficulty. In fact, let me grab, I got one. Okay, so again, to show you that square, there's the opposition between Mercury and Jupiter, but there's the squares. So that can be a testing or more uncomfortable, more difficult energy, perhaps even than the opposition or the conjunction. So anybody, and remember it went from 6 degrees to 22 degrees. So the whole sign of Sag, as well as these mutable signs, are all being impacted by this Mercury retrograde and this opposition. And just like we talked about with the Pluto, when we look at the element for this particular transit, this is fire and air, right? So the other fire signs, which are Aries and Leo, are going to really catch a break from this Mercury going retrograde. So you're going to be able to maybe, you'll get to the airport, and right after you get on, your plane takes off, you find out that the air traffic controller system went down and you were the last plane to leave. That's the kind of stuff that's going to happen more for Leos and Aries. You are going to catch a little bit of break there. And the other thing too is, even if something does go wrong, and this is really even for the squares too, but definitely for the trions like this, you'll actually be able to go, I really, maybe you did miss a plane, but you find out that the airport was snowed in where you were trying to go, and the plane had to get rerouted to, Columbus or something like that. So just be aware of that these fire trions can be a little bit more helpful. And one thing I didn't go into too much because I kind of ran out of time, so I'm going to do this real quickly. Also remember the sextiles. Okay, remember fire and air work good together, just like earth and water. So when we get these air signs, Aquarius and Libra, you too may experience a little bit more ease with this Mercury retrograde as opposed to the more difficult things. Okay, so I think that will do us for now. About Mercury retrograde, and I hope you've learned a little bit of something. Please let me know. And as you can see, I'm not exactly very technologically savvy here, but just let me know if you don't mind the handwritten stuff, or maybe someday I'll try to get more official with using computers and doing split screens and stuff like that. But for me right now, this works out great. So just remember, from here to there, from there to here, funny things are everywhere. Bye.